Massive welcome to all of our viewers on YouTube, LinkedIn and beyond to a one-off special here on InfoSec Live, where I'm joined by the community's very own Dr. Mike Brass to hear all about his journey in the industry and the work he's doing helping folks learn and upskill in the GRC space. And of course, giving you, our audience, the chance to engage with and learn from our guest today. Now, Dr. Brass is a senior information security leader with a career spanning over a decade in cybersecurity, with a proven track record of advising C-level executives on complex engagements and leading security initiatives, proven expertise in designing robust security and data privacy programs to safeguard critical data and mitigate evolving cyber threats. He actively contributes to the information security community, sharing insights through talks, publications, and mentorship programs. He's also an archaeologist who heads a mission in the Sudan at a site first excavated, can't even say that word, by the founder of the Wellcome Trust, and he firmly believes that his social science and project management skills are cross-disciplinary, and he leverages them every day to the benefit of the companies he works for and the wider InfoSec community. Now, we're going to be discussing this with Dr. Brass. He's recently released a GRC course on Udemy, which has been very highly rated. You may even get a sneaky discount code if you stay tuned. We're going to be hearing more about this with a chance for you, our audience, to ask questions all the way through. But before we bring him on, and for those new to the channel, I'm your host, Simon Lindstedt, and by sharing stories and best practices over the last few months, it's led to nearly 250,000 views here on YouTube by you, our amazing 11,300 subscribers. So if you're looking to get your brand noticed or just want the chance to share your own journey, reach out to me through LinkedIn or indeed the InfoSec Live community where all of this started. Now, time for a quick QR code. I know you'd be disappointed if I didn't bring one up at this point. In the free InfoSec Live community, we've got study groups, mentor sessions, free mini courses, and regular networking events to help you raise your game in the industry, no matter what stage you are in your career, giving you the chance to network with approaching 7,000 cybersecurity professionals. Recently, we've officially become a not-for-profit to help our members even more, with some big news coming on this soon. Now, make sure you join our community if you haven't already, right here. And a special thank you to our summer channel sponsors, Salt Security and CyberOne Solutions, for making these insightful shows possible. Links to find out more about them are in the description on our YouTube channel. And don't forget, each and every one of our live shows gives you, our audience, the chance to engage with our guests. So make sure you drop any questions you have in the chat for this week's show. Okay, let's bring Mike on. Good afternoon.
Hey, Simon.
I suppose it's now time to admit that that intro was actually pre-recorded and that's why it was glitchy. So Mike and I were laughing before we started. For those watching, I had two buttons to choose from as to which one was the right one, and I've chose the wrong one. So apologies for that intro. But Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
Absolutely my pleasure. I was just looking to see on my screen how many people were present, but I can't see.
I don't think it tells you on yours. It tells you on mine. We've got a combined at the moment of about 17 people watching across platforms.
Oh, that's excellent.
Which is a pretty good turnout. We normally get between 1,000 and 2,000 views within about 48 hours of them going live. I know the time we go live doesn't suit everyone. So whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching it on the replay, I hope you enjoy it. And if you are watching on the replay, please drop us some feedback in the chat as well and let us know what you thought. But Mike, let's kick off. We're going to talk about your very exciting course on Udemy in a little while. But what I want to do for people who haven't met you before is just to get you to give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you've got to where you are today.
Lord, this is always this is always an interesting thing. I mean, quite a few of you know I'm South African. I've been here in the UK since Christmas Day 1999, and I remember it because it was bloody snowing when I landed at Heathrow. That's how it's stuck in my head. I had a background in South Africa. It was anthropology, classics, archaeology, history. And the only reason I got into IT was I was coming across to the UK, figured I needed to actually earn some money, obviously. Well, otherwise, how the hell was I was going to survive? And my father had worked for IBM, so computers, at least in theory, was something that I was aware of. I didn't necessarily know it, apart from being able to type on a keyboard or anything. So I undertook some courses before I left South Africa in my last year of study. So I was doing university side by side with private study, and that's continued a
Do you
whole
mind?
pattern of
Do you
my
mind
life.
just do you mind just touching on? So if IT wasn't your field to start with, how did you start that study? Where did you begin?
Well, all I did was I actually played my father a little bit, and my father wasn't a very nice man, so I didn't feel guilty about it. He was going on, well, what will you do after your studies and that? Because IBM wasn't going to fund the university beyond a certain level anyway. So I said to him, well, the one thing that I do know about, at least in theory, is obviously computers, and let me explore that a bit more. So he paid for some private tutoring, CompTIA's A plus certification in 1999, and I did
Excellent.
some Microsoft Windows NT courses as well. And yes, then I came across and luckily very quickly founded a second line, not a help desk role at Oxford University Press. That was contract until the end of 2000. Then moved on to another contract role at the Oxford Archaeological Unit, went through a couple of more contract positions, took a year off and did my master's in archaeology, uh, by which time my wife was moving across from Malta to Cambridge to study at Cambridge. So I moved up to Cambridge, was employed for 4 years as a systems administrator at a venture capital company. They then outsourced the position of systems administrator, but luckily, immediately I found another job, which was IT manager. So I was one of the youngest IT managers in London at age 31, heading up the IT function for the Institute for Government, which is in the news very regularly at the moment, particularly in the run up with any elections. It's chaired by Lord David Sainsbury, the
Yeah.
Vice Chancellor of Cambridge University, former
Great
science.
shops. Great
Yep,
shops. Yeah.
yep. Former science minister, Tony Blair's government heads the Gatsby Foundation, which is the actual foundation that sponsors the Institute for Government. So I was there for 8 years, building it up from scratch. I was the 13th member. We had over 50 staff by the time I left. Um, and then I was headhunted for Dialight. It's in the manufacturing sector. So I was in charge of the IT for EMEA, UK, and Australasia. And the interesting things while I was, and obviously in the previous functions in there, you're dealing with cybersecurity in various formats, fine. But the interesting thing was Ernest and Young had produced a report for Dialight on business cybersecurity as a whole, taking it beyond any of the technical areas and taking it beyond what I had been doing anyway at the Institute for Government. Um, Dialight fired the director of IT. I picked up the report. I walked into the CFO's office, just two desks away from me, said, nobody is dealing with this. I'm interested. She said, okay, you now head the global information security for Dialight. So 2 minutes later, I walked out of there and my career changed effectively as a
There's a
result
lesson
of those
there,
two
isn't there?
minutes.
There's
Yeah,
a lesson there. If you don't ask, you don't get.
absolutely. And then I was headhunted for UBSense, where I'm finishing my term at the moment. And I built up the entire security function, revamped IT. I'm the data protection officer there. So three hats, three different responsibilities. And it also is a highlight to where I actually think the industry is going. So when you're in smaller companies, there can be a convergence between the CISO and CIO roles. However, they are termed, I don't care about the titles. That's fine. But there is a far greater overlap at the moment between the data privacy and the information security at the moment, and that goes well beyond we need to protect data. I can't
The thing
I
is,
can't
right?
stand that phrase.
No, I agree, and I think having worked with governance, oversight, and control functions in financial services, the one thing that surprised me quite a lot about this industry is the fact that no one seems to know what their data is and where it is. So we
No,
protect everything else. But when it comes to categorizing data, we're pretty poor at it, aren't we?
absolutely. And we've got the UK will eventually catch up to the EU. It has to in order to stay aligned. We've got the likes of Dora coming
Yeah.
down the line very, very shortly. NIS2 is going live, if memory serves me correctly, in November. But it's October or November, one of those 2 months. But the point is, you've got to have the representation on the board. You've got to have the executive clued in, and more importantly, particularly with the NIS2, it's requiring on staff capabilities, not just we're outsourcing X and Y on the tactical operations. Fine, a company can bring in a virtual CISO, fine, but it has to be extremely defined and they have to have the business rationale. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you have to have the expertise at a business strategic level on staff. If you're a company that is either in the critical industry category, categories for NIS2, or you're part of the supply chain, the critical supply chain into those companies. And if your company doesn't have it, you got to get with the program on this, or you're going to lose out.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you, Mike. I want to take a step back because you mentioned the Masters in Archaeology, and we've spoken before about your trips to Sudan. Talk to me a little bit
hmm
more about that, and also talk to me, probably more importantly, about how you've transferred those skills and what those skills are you've transferred across to this industry.
So let's take it from the bottom up. What is actually involved in heading an expedition in the first place? And I and yes, Sudan. So you've got to write up the report. You've got to write up for the grant proposal. You're making a business case. Number one, you are pulling together the project team. Let's just say that comes together. That is merely the start of it all. You've also got to get your institution approval. So you've got politics that need to be played amongst a lot of different key stakeholders in there. I say played, but you've got to be there within the program. You've got to be there on any committees. You've got to have that as personal relationships, those stakeholder communications going through. Then there is a risk assessment that also has to be completed by the university, and that has to be passed before you're allowed out into the field. Um, I'm both member, obviously, of the university, but I'm also a bit independent. So, um, excuses. If I really wanted to, I could ignore that. Okay, but it would from the university or the denial, but it would have repercussions down the
Of
line.
course.
So you've got to stick with the program. Obviously, there's any arrangements to get to the destination. Fine, but you land there, and what else happens? You have got politics that you need to deal with, foreign ministry that needs to be spoken to. You've got inspectors, so you've got external personnel that you're needing to manage as well. It's a joint expedition between three different parties, so you're juggling those particular balls. Imagine you're sitting with a large project, you're dealing with internal stakeholders, you're dealing with external stakeholders of any other kinds, you're dealing with suppliers, you're dealing with um, the milestones along the way that you have to have. So the project management skills are extremely transferable in all of this. You've got the arrangements that need to happen on the ground. Then you get to the destination, and the fun actually begins on all of this. You've got training that is involved of staff members there. You've got community outreach that actually needs to happen, and again that falls all the way back within the communication skills that you need to have to leverage with everybody from receptionist to the CEO. You've got to win over the people. While we're there, we've got people from the local government that come out to the site, so I'm dealing with them as well. And then at the end of each day, you've got the actual post excavation analysis that happens at the end of every day. So think of it as a kind of wash up at the end of the day, the project work, and think the agile project
Yeah.
methodology is the closest you can get to all of this. And it goes on and it goes on and it's on. Then it reaches the end of the field work, and everyone thinks, oh, this is fantastic and this is the end result. Nope. You've got to write all of this up. You've got to
Yeah.
analyze it. you've got to get samples dated. You've got to get the samples out of the country. And there's a whole bunch of things that come into it there. It's much more intense than any kind of lessons learned. It's integrating that into what is the strategies for the next step. It's integrating it into the wider vision that is happening. And so I view all of this as extremely transferable skills.
Love that. And there's a question come in from our very good friend Prashant there in the chat, which says, do you need to have been a project manager in order to become a GRC specialist? Good question, Prashant.
No, is it advantageous? Absolutely.
But you don't
And
need it.
no, you don't need it. But if you want to get it, learn Prince 2 Agile.
Okay, thank you. And I think that probably leads us on to the thing I really want to focus on today. Let me see if I can get this QR code up without it blocking your face. Hold on. So this one, which is clearly blocking your face. Let me take it off and try and work out a way to do that. I'll tell you what, it's one of those days today, isn't it? You used to be able to change the way. Let's try this. Does this work? No, still blocking your face out. So if you could pump your chair up about 4 foot, Mike, that would.
let's let's see.
Let's see if you can do it.
Stand
If
up.
not, you're going to have. There we go. If not, you're going to shuffle to the left. So you've been a member of the InfoSec Live community for a long time now, and you've been an amazing mentor, friend, and guide to lots of people in there throughout their cybersecurity journeys. Earlier on, I don't know if it was this year or whether it was last year, you started working on this course. It seems like a while ago now since you actually started it. I want to
Mhm.
ask a couple of things before we dig into the course, and it relates back to Prashant's question about do you need project management skills? What skills do you need before looking into GRC, if any?
Hmm. I'm trying to avoid the traditional come up by the bloody IT technical route because I really can't stand that kind of answer.
I mean, the
Obviously,
thing is, and the
is
answer
that
you hear that from is from people who've come up through the
yes.
traditional IT route. Yeah.
Does it have some advantages? Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Does it depend on the company who's hiring and their particular contextual environment? Obviously, I kind of go the opposite route. I advise the project management skills. I advise getting to know risk, and in particular, I certainly advise getting to know, if you're in North America, obviously NIST. If you're everywhere else in the world, ISO 27001 and ISO 27005. 27005 is the condensed version in terms of ISO's risk management. It's Are they foolproof? Absolutely not. But that is an excellent, excellent place to start and to try and move across. Um,
So,
but yes, at some point you're going to have to know some IT, unfortunately, on this. But you can certainly get away with it for the
I mean,
for the time being.
how much IT knowledge do you need to work in the governance, risk, and compliance space? I could argue that you probably don't need to learn too many coding languages, as it might not come in. Well, I say might not come in terribly useful. Scripts come in useful in every job that you do, whether it's in tech or not. But you could probably get away with it. When you say IT fundamentals, what do you mean by that? What do people need to know?
I'm thinking more of Network Plus and
Yeah.
Security Plus. I'm not thinking of CCNA.
Okay.
So when you think of it from those levels, that's what I'm meaning. If we go into GLC from the perspective of the apprenticeships, in that regard, if you don't know ISO 27001 or NIST or the bespoke framework that is being used at your company, you're simply not going to pass that apprenticeship. You're going to
Yeah.
fail it and you're going to fail it outright. Where it goes into some of the implementations and the day to day knowledge. And that's where I see a wide variety between those that are much more business focused and risk management focused, and those who, out of necessity, they're having to look at technical data and pull that information out. But if you have the Network Plus, then
Should
you're
be
good to go on that.
be a good grounding. Thank you. Okay, well let's talk about the course. I'm going to have to block your face off because My QR codes are just going to block your face there. But if anyone's interested in the course, a couple of things: scan that, it will take you through. And also, if I'm right, Mike, I think there might be a discount code on your LinkedIn profile. Am I right in thinking that?
For 11.99 for the next 5 days.
Amazing. So let me post that, and let me post your LinkedIn link as well. And I'm going to get you just to go through what the course covers and why you built the course in a moment. But Dolores is in the audience, and she's asked a question, and she's asked, are those IT, can't even talk today, are those IT skills needed to get started in the field or eventually?
I would always do IT research side by side with anything else that you're studying. It doesn't mean you need to be an IT expert, but certainly pick that up. The whole point into of that, which seemingly contradicts what I said earlier, is you've got to get to the point where you're differentiating yourself from everybody else. And unfortunately, that takes a heck of a lot of effort. So I would do it at the start, but alongside learning about ISO 27001 courses on this, depending where you are in the world. And you've got to get to grips with the directives and regulations in your particular country as well.
Very much
That
so.
is
Okay.
absolutely critical.
I'm going to take this off screen and bring it back up at the end so more people can scan it. We've had 7 people scan that QR code in the last few seconds, so I'll make sure I get it put up again. But Prashant's got another question before I get you to delve into the course, which is this one, which is also going to cover up your face. If you put your hands like this, it'll look like one of them.
We'll
How
stand
do
up. I'm
we
gonna get
how do we get senior management to buy into the needs of GRC and get other departments to cooperate? Another good question, Prashant.
To me, that's actually quite easy. It does require that the management recognizes a certain need for information security. So if you're coming in at a certain level, it means there is some degree of recognition anyway within the company. Ultimately, it comes down to what is the business strategy, what is the business objectives, what is needed to accomplish those business objectives, and how you can enable the business to achieve those objectives within that without there being any kind of degradation in the financial revenue. And to take one example, the company I'm currently still with, last year, the work that I did and the work that was also done by some other people, because this is all a collaborative effort, guaranteed a core revenue of over 5 million euros. In the year before that, it was over 8 million euros. There are reasons for that decline, but unrelated to the security function on there. So that's where you're getting at. You've got to if you're in those critical industries, which UBSense just happens to be, within that you've got to comply with the directives, you've got to comply with the requirements of the companies that you're partnering with or the companies that are your customers. That immediately is going to get the attention of the executive. You use that as leverage. You find out the strategy, you find out the objectives, you do the alignment, you attempt to remove all the roadblocks that are possible, you help them out, you get those agreements signed. If you're signing agreements with partner companies, you're there, you're at the forefront, you're making sure that those agreements get over the line. And most importantly, construct forums in which you and the relevant stakeholders are formally interacting and they can see the benefits.
Love that. Thank you. Prashant's made a good comment here. Um, you did mention it earlier that you're coming to the end of your tenure at Ubisoft through reasons that aren't your fault, just one of those business situations, unfortunately. And he's put there, hopefully us bugging / asking Dr. Mike questions will get him a CISO role in no time. I don't think we
Much
have to ask
appreciated.
him any more questions because you've demonstrated quite clearly how much you know about the industry already. So, but no, good point, Prashant. Mike, so we've got, how long have we got? 5 minutes left, and I want you to focus this 5 minutes on why you built the course, why you built the course, who the course is for, and what it's all about. And I'm going to block your face off unless you want to stand up. So we've got that QR code back up there again.
put
There we
it
go.
put it on. The genesis of the course is because I'm a BCS assessor. I'm an external assessor on IT and all the cybersecurity standards. And I noticed a wide discrepancy in the knowledge that was being shown by cybersecurity apprentices. And there were a couple of occasions that really stood out to me. One was at a big national company. I happened to fail the particular person, and around 4 weeks later, that person came back. I just happened to be assigned as that person's assessor again, and I asked that person what changed in the meantime. That person said they took what I said on board in the report, went to the risk and compliance department in their company. The risk and compliance department had never heard of the department in which this person was operating in.
No.
And that department was quite critical. So as soon as they realized this department existed, they were all over him. We have to get involved. This is fantastic and everything. They invited the person in for a large number of days to actually shadow and ask questions in the risk and compliance. And the person took this back to their department, to the delight of the manager in that department. Ultimately, the risk and compliance in that department were now having weekly meetings, and had established that cooperation. And the person said something that's always stuck into my mind is, "Thank you. You've changed the degree of my influence and trajectory within the company." Uh, of a similar thing happened with somebody else. But because of all of this, what I went and did was I started asking some questions. To what degree is GLC part and parcel of the formal training that they get in by training providers? And as it turned out, very little
Yeah.
on this. So it came down entirely to what was available in the companies or organizations that the apprentices happened to be in. I thought this is not good enough. Here's a gap. I'm the one who's got those insights from the apprenticeships. I can make a course out of this. Then as I started making the course, oh, I'll just add on this little bit here. I add on that little bit there. Oh, but that business insight is absolutely fantastic. Right, it's going in. And before I knew it, I was covering the entire ISACA CRIS curriculum, and I was thrown in aspects of CISM from CISSP and here and cross business skills and everything. And wham, it just came together on all of this. And I thought, well, okay, I've got a diverse audience from people wanting to move into GLC, whether they're apprentices, whether they're newbies, whether they're somebody from IT or somewhere, maybe from auditing or something, whatever it is, wanting to move into the GLC. Is it somebody wanting to undertake the CRIS certification itself? Is it somebody just needing to brush up on any of the aspects within the course, because it is highly modular, though obviously I link everything together on this. And then I had people messaging, oh, a salesperson in my organization is interested because they want to know what the relevance of the GRC is to their role and what they could potentially then bring back to the table to the security function. I thought, okay, I hadn't actually thought of it from that perspective at that point in time. Obviously, I do this in my day job, but it was the first time I had a non-GRC, non-apprentice, non-IT, non-cybersecurity or information security specialist actually taking an interest. So, okay, I've got another particular audience here as well. People who don't want to do the bloody annualized security awareness course, who thinks, well, okay, I'm doing all of this, but what does it actually mean for my role? How can I get an idea of what it is and then go and talk to my security people? How can I get it explained in clear English? And so here we go.
No,
Another target audience.
I love that. And you are assessor for, is it BCC? You said you're an assessor for?
BCS, the Chartered
Sorry,
Institute of IT.
that's it. And my 19-year-old son, we spoke about this before, he's doing an apprenticeship through his firm Aviva at the moment. And he's also mentioned that there's absolutely zero GRC stuff in that. So I'm going to recommend that he takes advantage of your discount code. Seeing as his annual salary is more than mine now, he can pay for it himself at 19 years old. But Brian Meaney, good to see you, Brian. He's asked this question. Apologies if this has been covered already. I was late joining. Does the Udemy course help towards an industry certification?
CISM and CRISC, which is spelled CRISC.
CRISC. ISC. I hope that helps, Brian. And if you didn't hear, Brian, if you've just joined us, there is a discount code on Dr. Mike's LinkedIn profile, which I've dropped in the chat, which I think takes the course down to, did you say £12 for the
Yes,
course?
12 pounds or the equivalent, because it's not constant. Udemy transfers that into the equivalent currency
Oh, of course it
in different
does.
countries. If you're in India and Pakistan, you're basically paying pennies.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Let me just bring that QR code up again just to block off Mike's face for the last minute of the show. For anyone who is interested, do take a look. I'm going to register myself and my son in a bit. I won't make him pay for it. I'm going to do it so I can have a look at the course with him. Coming from a governance, risk, and compliance background in financial services, I'm interested to see how much correlation, if any, there is, and whether that's going to help me with my learning. And for anyone transitioning into the cybersecurity industry and is very focused on things like try hack me and hack the box, which are fantastic, but what they don't teach you is compliance. And I think to understand the industry at all, it's the foundations of it are compliance. You know, without compliance, nothing happens. So I highly, highly recommend that you take a look. Let me just check the chat before we wrap up. Brian, perfect. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, Mike, any last words of wisdom before we wrap things up and I put my kayak on the roof of my car and take it down the river for a little paddle, is what I'm going to do this evening.
Do a risk assessment for that.
I will. I've got a life jacket. It's fine. The straps will be tight. I've got my check box. It's brilliant. But I suppose, last question then. Any words of wisdom for people who are, because there's so many people trying to break into the industry at the moment. There's a lot of conflicting information all over social media about the skills gap. You and I know how tough the market is out there at the moment, from a leadership position right down to those entry level kind of unicorn positions that we don't seem to be able to find. What words of encouragement would you give to people who are looking to come in?
I always say if you're in the UK, go down the apprenticeship route. You ma-
100%.
you stand a chance in actually getting in that regard, because then it will be with companies who are willing to cover your particular training. It is very hard out there at the moment, or the recruiters that I'm speaking to right now are saying it will pick up after the election, but you can look to 4 to 6 weeks after the election, and then another bout in September as people are coming back from holiday and as boards are preparing the budgets for the final push in the financial year and obviously for next year.
Brilliant, thank you. And I suppose we should mention the general election without mentioning specific parties. Whether this is your first time voting, whether you're a disillusioned voter, I don't know who out there at the moment are the people to vote for. All I do know, and I'm going to put my head above the parapet here and say I've voted Conservative for a long time, that can't continue. We do need a change. And I think for anyone out there thinking there's no point voting because Labour are going to win it anyway, don't make that assumption. If you've got someone you want to vote for, put your postal vote in or get yourself down there on the day, because that's the only way we get to have a voice in this country, whether it's democratic or not. Who knows? But I think if we don't vote, we can't comment. Any comments on that, Mike, without annihilating your future career from a political point of view? See, I'm unemployable, so I can say what I want. Vote Green Party. Not really.
Yes, Simon knows my political views on it,
I
which are
do.
center left. But
Yeah.
the whole point is that the, in my view, the political debate at the moment in the UK, unfortunately, is quite toxic. I
Yeah.
would like to see it return to respectability, and
Yeah.
that is on both sides. It doesn't matter what. There was a time when it was highly respectable, and I'd just like to see that return. And the only way that that can be returned is by voting for
It is.
people of integrity, regardless of the political views of that
Yeah.
person. Is regarding vote for someone who has the integrity.
And let me focus on that integrity word and I'm going to nail my colours firmly to the mast because I am unemployable. Nigel Farage, I'm just going to mention this man and the promises he's made throughout social media. I'm not going to say anything more than there's no way he's going to pay for all that because there's no money. And secondly, the second point is around believing what you read. There's a ton of disinformation out there at the moment, and there was something in the press this morning about Russia getting involved in more disinformation. Don't just believe what you read from a headline. Make sure you dig in and have a look underneath the bonnet, as they say, because it is important. But without getting too political, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. For anyone who hasn't, make sure, as Mad Dog said, Monster Raving Looney Party. I expect they'll probably get a few votes this year. But if you haven't checked out Mike's course, please do. There is one more question, which I'm just going to grab, if that's okay. Leslie Forbes, are all companies offering apprenticeships registered with government? That's
So
a good question.
it goes through, there's meant to be a government portal on which these are offered, but you can also go onto the actual training providers' websites, whether it's QA, STO, Firebrand, and there are a number of smaller companies. Uh, They've got the apprenticeships that are advertised there. So what happens is a company says, we want to offer an apprenticeship, and then either there's a candidate that's in mind, or they go out, the training providers go out and advertise. So it's always worth getting in contact with those training providers themselves directly
And
on all of
do
this.
you find that companies who are involved in critical national infrastructure are quite heavily involved in apprenticeship programs? I only mention that because I've spoken to a few different people over the last few weeks who work in that work in that sector.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So Leslie, the point I'm trying to make is I don't know where there's an independent central repository for all of the apprenticeship schemes that are available at the moment. But if you think critical national infrastructure and go to those companies' websites and have a bit of a dig around, I think that could be well worth
Yeah,
it.
but it might not be on their websites, but they go through those
They
same
do.
training providers. I've had people from the banking sector, I've had people from telecoms, from the water sector, and from other companies, and they've all come through the standard training providers.
Perfect. And
So
you said
be in
QA,
contact.
Firebrand. Who was the other one you mentioned?
STO, which is ESTIO, is another one, and
ESTI.
ESTIO.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are a bunch of other small ones as well.
Okay, perfect. Mike, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone, no matter what you're doing. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share with everyone today. Have a
Been my
great rest of
pleasure.
the
Thank you.
weekend. See you all soon.
Take care.